Hey everyone, it's Ethan or Miist back again from another video today, and welcome back to the channel, guys. We're here again for yet another video, and today we're going to be talking about every movie I watched last week, and it was a very interesting week, to say the least. I'll tell you now, it's a pretty poor week. I would say I watched 13 movies, so that's pretty good actually, but a lot of the movies that I watched I did not rank very highly, or I just thought were okay. So let's get into it, starting it off with my least favorite of the week, which is After Earth. And this is actually a big theme for the week, which is M. Night Shyamalan. Finally going through some of his filmography, which is one of my goals for the year, which I just haven't gotten around to do so yet. I felt like it was a good time, obviously with Trap being released, which I did see, which we will talk about at some point in this video as well. So, After Earth honestly was kind of surprising. It wasn't good at all by any means, but I know people consider this one of the worst movies ever made. I actually don't think it's that bad. I mean, I ranked it a 15 out of 100, so it's not like I think it's good by any means, but I really expected like less than 5. So honestly, it was kind of a surprise. And this was really my first experience with Shyamalan, because I had seen Knock at the Cabin last year, but this is very different than Knock at the Cabin. So yeah, this is really how I started my week with Shyamalan. So let's move on to Zoolander 2, which I watched both Zoolanders this week. And honestly, I didn't think either of them were very good. I know a lot of people like these movies, but they're super comedy movies, and comedy is very subjective. So if you like it, good for you. I'm glad you do, but it's just not for me. I ranked the second one an 18 out of 100. I didn't really enjoy it at all, although honestly I do think it was funnier than the first one, which I feel like is a hot take. But let's talk about the first one, which I ranked a 25 out of 100. So again, like I said, didn't really like either of these. I know the first one is probably it is more iconic for sure. And I really had high hopes for this movie, but I just didn't really enjoy it a whole lot. I thought it was quite dumb, and again, the comedy mostly just didn't land for me in both movies. It just wasn't really there for me. So, with that being said, it's just kind of a letdown, kind of a disappointment. Ranked it at 25, so these two movies combined for like a 43 out of 200, so not good, to say the least. Let's move on to a Disney Channel movie that I watched with Mel, which is Princess Protection Program, which I ranked a 1.5 star for a 30 out of 100, and Mel had ranked a 3 star, which is quite low for Mel. But this is an iconic childhood movie from both of our lives. I remember watching this a lot as a kid, and I know Mel did too, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, we had watched basically the second half of the movie because we had watched the first half a few weeks ago. We just never ended up finishing it, and we didn't really want to watch the full thing. We didn't really want to restart it, so we just finished it. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't good, to say the least. I mean, a 30 out of 100. Most of the Disney Channel original movies aren't very good, and yeah, I mean, sorry, Mel. I know Mel likes them a lot more than I do, but anyways, not a fan. Let's move on to The Happening, which this is the first Shyamalan film that I watched that, or at least of the week at this point, that I was starting to enjoy. There were some things I really enjoyed about this movie, especially the mystery of the movie, but it ultimately just wasn't anything great. My biggest issue with this movie was honestly just Mark Wahlberg. I don't think he's a good actor in general. I don't think he's great, at least. And in this movie, he was really hard to believe, I found. And some of his line delivery was really, really poor. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the way M. Night writes movies. They don't like his dialogue. I don't find it to be too much of an issue, but sometimes I do in certain movies. This one was probably the one that really kind of punched me in the face the most, with kind of poor dialogue. It was more so just poor delivery. Anyways, this was interesting, but I just don't think it's that good. So 42 out of 100. And let's move on to an interesting podcast, kind of, I guess. It's a podcast true crime documentary that I watched with Mel, and it's actually from the YouTuber Kendall Ray, if you know who Kendall Ray is. That's one of Mel's favorite YouTubers, and she has been for years. Mel absolutely loves true crime, and when we had gone on our anniversary trip last week, we had listened to a few true crime podcasts from Crime Junkies, and I've always been like watching Kendall Ray videos with Mel throughout our relationship. And Kendall Ray has 2 documentaries, so we decided to watch one this week, which was 530 Days, The Unsolved Case of Jessica Easterly, which I ranked a 55 out of 100. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's bad. I know a lot of people were complaining about this film's directing and that it wasn't very good, and that the filming, and it was hard to kind of follow at times, which I agree, especially towards the start of the documentary. I felt like it was hard to follow. And the way that this documentary started was that we were going to get to know Jessica Easterly, which I don't really feel like we did. We didn't get to really learn a lot from her, unfortunately. But I do appreciate, obviously, what Kendall Ray and Crime Junkies, and I'm sure many other true crime podcasts are doing, bringing awareness to these cases and to these people that have lost their lives. So rest in peace to Jessica Easterly. Let's move on to American Hustle, which I ranked a 60 out of 100. This one was kind of a letdown as well. I expected to really enjoy this movie, and honestly, I just thought it was decent, like just barely decent. There were times of like greatness, and then there was really times of just annoyance for me. That I don't know. It was a really up and down movie with a lot of hills and valleys, which I just didn't really love, to say the least. Obviously, great cast with some good performances, I should say. I do feel like some actors were underutilized in this movie, mostly, of course, Christian Bale, who is the GOAT. Honestly, there might only be a handful of people that are a better actor than him, so yeah. I don't know. It was fine, a 60 out of 100. Absolutely love Jennifer Lawrence in this movie, though. That was definitely the shining point of this movie for me. So let's move on to Three Amigos, which is very interesting because, I mean, it's 3 really interesting comedians with, I do feel like, some different style of comedy as well. Although this movie is mostly about Steve Martin, but the comedy mostly comes from Martin Short, and I just kind of feel like Chevy Chase was there. Like he didn't really seem like he had anything to do. He didn't really have much comedy either, I don't find. So, I mean, overall, this was a decent movie. I did have some chuckles. It was interesting at times. It was kind of funny. I ranked it a 63 out of 100. It was cool to see the relationship of Martin Short and Steve Martin kind of, I guess, blossom into what they have now. They're obviously great friends, of course, being in Only Murders in the Building as well. And it's cool to see where that comedy and that chemistry kind of originated from, I think, at least. This is a pretty old movie from the 86, and I love that I wrote, Steve Martin, how do you have white hair in the 80s? Because he's not even that old. Anyways, 63 out of 100 for the Three Amigos. So let's move on to what is now the top 5. And the top 5, I'm only at 65 out of 100. Now, I've definitely had worse weeks than this one, but let's go with Burnt. Burnt was showing really good signs of great filmmaking and entertainment through the film for me. There was times where I really, really loved the movie, and there was times where I really just thought it was okay. So I feel like a 65 is a pretty decent rating. Obviously, I do have it as a decent movie, but ultimately, the best part about this movie was the magnificent score. I think it was James Newton Howard or Rob Simonson. I can't remember. I think it was one of those two. Either way, a really beautiful score that I really loved, and honestly, every scene of like legitimately just staring at people cook was really fascinating to me, and I've just kind of always had this interest in cooking movies, I guess. Like, there's something about it that's just interesting to me. I don't really know what it is, and honestly, like, I don't know, I just enjoyed it. I would like to watch more. I really want to watch The Chef by Jon Favreau, so that's on my watch list, so maybe I'll have to do that sometime soon. But a 65 out of 100 for what is a decent movie, in my opinion. So let's move on to the first good movie of the week and one I watched today, actually. So 72 out of 100 for Old, another M. Night movie. And you're probably noticing a theme. I didn't get to watch a lot of his best movies, quote unquote. So Old, though, was really interesting. And this was definitely the scariest M. Night movie that I've seen so far, because I don't really find I get too scared in movies, even in a horror movie, which I don't think this is a horror movie by any means, but there's definitely some horror elements, and I do think, like I said, from what I've seen so far from his filmography, this is his scariest, and mostly because for me, I'm not a huge fan of body horror, and that's where it really gets me. That kind of stuff gets me scared or tense or on edge. So there's a very graphic body horror scene in this movie, which I was very uncomfortable with. But it's actually the movie poster I chose, to be fair. So anyways, very interesting movie, really. I mean, I know a lot of people find this slow and boring. I just don't. I really enjoyed this. I think it's a great cast with some really interesting performances as well. So that's 72 out of 100 for Old. Let's move on to what I think might be a hot take about how high I have this in M. Night's filmography, which is The Village. This is his best dialogue, in my opinion, that I've seen so far. I really loved. I feel like it's kind of like, old America, old English, I guess. I don't know. It's giving kind of like Amish vibes, but it's really interesting with some truly great performances. Most notably, Adrian Brody, William Hurt, and I also think Bryce Dallas Howard had a Bryce Dallas Howard had a great performance as well. I do feel like Joaquin Phoenix was a little underutilized. Obviously, he wasn't in a big portion of this film as well, but yeah, some great performances throughout. A very interesting plot. That I really, really enjoyed. I ranked it a 77 out of 100. Like I said, at this time of recording, it's my third favorite Shyamalan. But again, I still haven't seen a lot of his filmography. So, yeah, 3.5. Let's move on to Knock at the Cabin, which I did see in theaters last year. So this is a rewatch, and the first portion of this review, obviously you can see, is me kind of just reminiscing about what it's like to rewatch a movie. And I love rewatching movies, especially after having a lot more knowledge about movies. And something I didn't even mention in this movie is really just the battle of what a gay or queer person has to go through in life. And that was very interesting. I've not seen anything like that in any of M. Night's films, so I really enjoyed that, and I thought that was really good. And yeah, anyways, reviewing or going back to what I was saying just about rewatching a movie. I had no idea Kiki's Delivery Service was referenced in this movie, which I think is a great movie. I think I have it like an 86 or something. So I really enjoy that movie. I didn't even know that movie existed last year in February, and now I've watched it. So that's just kind of, fun. Although I've watched probably close to 600, 700, 800 movies since I watched this movie. Wow, that's actually kind of wild to think about. Anyways, I also didn't know who Jonathan Groff was at the time of watching this movie last year in theaters, so now I know who he is, mostly because of Mel. Mel knows he's just a music icon in Frozen, I think Hamilton, Glee, I think there's some other things as well, but yeah, shout out Jonathan Groff. So I did enjoy this movie still. I did lower the ranking though from an 86 down to a 79. Still think it's a good movie, for sure. Love Dave Bautista, of course. That's my man, but yeah, a 79 out of 100 for my second favorite watch of the week. So let's move on to my first. My favorite watch of the week, I mentioned it earlier in the video, Trap. My favorite M. Night movie so far, a 92 out of 100. A very interesting plot, a very interesting film. I really love the directing. There's some truly amazing shots, scenery, cinematography in this movie. It's really, really beautiful to look at. It's one of the best to look at of the year, honestly. A awesome performance throughout the entire movie. Half of this movie is honestly kind of a musical, with some really, really great music from Seleka. And Seleka also had a really great performance in this movie as well, alongside Josh Hartnett, of course, who was really, really great. I even think Alison Pill had a good performance as well. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this movie. Honestly, I would like to rewatch this, and I want to try to get Mel to see this because it's not too scary. It is kind of more into Mel's genre because of musicals, even though it's not really a musical. There's a lot of music involved in it, of course. But the production of this movie really was just tremendous. It was really great, and loved the twists and turns, and we just kept twisting and turning, and I loved the ending, just keeping it ambiguous. So yeah, 92 out of 100 for my third or fourth favorite movie of the year. I can't decide. It's tied with Late Night with the Devil at a 92 out of 100, 1 point behind Furiosa, which is number 2. So it's going to be number 3 or number 4. I just haven't decided yet which one I prefer. So with that being said, thank you guys all so much for watching. I'm going to hopefully watch the Unbreakable / Split trilogy this week. Hopefully Sixth Sense as well. And I would like to try and watch Signs because Ryan said he wanted to watch it with me. So yeah, with that being said, thank you guys all so much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.